Now that you've learned about what happiness isn't, it's not the hedonic happiness, I'd like to talk to you about what research has shown true happiness comes from. And so today we're going to talk about what is at the root of super couple marriages, because what is at the root of happiness? And this is happiness that is at the root of every type of happiness, not just in our marriages, but in our lives. So I think this is going to be one of the most important videos you've watched because it's going to help you change how you see and pursue happiness. You will attain it if you practice what I'm about to read. If you like what you're hearing, remember to like and subscribe, and please always share it with a family or friend. And if you would be so honored, I would receive any contributions that you'd be willing to give at buymeacoffee.com, link in the show notes below. Eudaimonic happiness. When we focus on the self-centric and fleeting material happiness of hedonism, happiness eludes us. But when we focus on more other-centric thoughts and practices, true happiness becomes attainable. The name for this type of happiness is eudaimonic. Before I explain eudaimonia, let me first tell you several ways it can be cultivated. I believe you will then immediately begin to understand what leads to true and lasting happiness in our lives and marriages. According to Lubomirsky and other researchers, some of the best ways to cultivate happiness is by, number one, giving thanks. Research Mike McCullough, Emmons, Lubomirsky, and others have revealed that the power of simply counting our blessings on a regular basis. Remember, this is research. People who keep gratitude journals feel more optimism and greater satisfaction with their lives. And research shows that writing a gratitude letter to someone you've never properly thanked brings a major boost of happiness. Number two, practicing kindness. Research by Elizabeth Dunn and her colleagues finds that people report greater happiness when they spend money on others than when they spend it on themselves, even though they initially think the opposite would be true. Similarly, neuroscience research shows that when we do nice things for others, our brains light up in areas associated with pleasure and rewards. And lastly, most importantly, giving up grudges. Groundbreaking studies by Everett Worthington, Michael McCullough, and their colleagues show that when we forgive those who have wronged us, we feel better about ourselves, experience more positive emotions, and feel closer to others. Now, the final key finding reported by the scholars at GGSC regarding cultivating true happiness is perhaps the most relative to my research in the super couple, building relationships. They write that, quote, perhaps the dominant finding from happiness research is that social connections are key to happiness. Studies show that close relationships, including romantic relationships, are especially important, suggesting we should make time for those closest to us, people in whom we can confide and who'll support us when we're down. Now, the word eudaimonia comes from the Greek words that together mean good spirit or well-being. And it seems telling that this type of happiness is pronounced eudaimonic, begins by putting you and not me first. The concept of eudaimonia is central in Aristotelian ethics, as well as the Greek word arete, which usually translated into English as the words virtue or excellence. Aristotle describes eudaimonia as the highest human good and human flourishing, unlike its brother hedonism, which is short-term, fleeting, and decreases in pleasure over time. Eudaimonic happiness produces long-term results and actually increases the more of it one has, or I should say, the more of it one practices. While hedonic happiness is based on extrinsic reward, the rewards gained from the eudaimonic happiness are intrinsic. So what does this mean? Eudaimonia can be better explained as the pay-it-forward happiness. Crazy, isn't it? Research has found that people are most happy when they focused on giving rather than receiving, when they focus more on the other than the self. I bet you're already making applications to the marriage here. I'm sure you're having a no-duh moment right now, as I did when I first learned of this. But it was still nonetheless amazing to me to see that science confirmed what my mother had always taught me. Put others before yourself, and it will always warm your heart. You will be happy. Amazing. Okay, so have you ever volunteered at a soup kitchen or worked with the homeless or with any other disadvantaged population? Have you ever given time or money to someone else who, though you definitely needed it more? Have you ever placed money into the palm of a hungry man or mowed the lawn of an elderly neighbor? Have you ever paid for the meal of the person behind you in the drive-through because the person ahead of you paid for yours? I have, and it felt great to hear, ma'am, your order has been paid for. Would you like to pass on the favor? Felt even better driving off knowing I'd just done the same. That's eudaimonia. Each time you selflessly give of yourself to one of these others, you were experiencing the intrinsic rewards of eudaimonic happiness. Let me give you a story. My family used to attend a church that collected food and gifts for the poorest of the poor in our city and delivered those gifts each year to a family a few days prior to the Christmas holiday. I'm sure your church, synagogue, or workplace has likely done something similar. While most collection sites collect and wrap the gifts and food once purchased by the generous donors, not all programs allow, for privacy reasons, for the delivery directly to the specific houses by the churchgoers. We were lucky enough, though we hadn't yet realized it, that we were able to do so. At this particular church, we picked a name off the angel tree that had the age and gender of a child or adult, as well as his or her shoe size, clothing sizes, and we purchased a gift or two for that person. Because the gifts were going to those who often couldn't afford to eat, no requests for toys or other non-essentials were listed on the angel tag, though that didn't always stop us from adding a small toy or non-essential item. On one particular Christmas week, my family was given grocery bags filled with a turkey or ham, enough groceries for a complete yet humble Christmas dinner for a family of 7 and 14, a family of 7, and 14 individually wrapped gifts, 2 per person, each marked with the tags from the angel tree. We were sent to the poorest and, dare I say, the most dangerous part of our city was nothing more than the address of the recipients. My husband, myself, and both of our daughters were together on this brisk, dark winter day, and I must admit, we were in a hurry to do what it was we needed to do and quickly leave for whatever event we had next on our schedule for that day. You know, something extremely important like dinner with friends or maybe a date with our television and a Green Bay Packers game. Or more Christmas shopping. You know, imperative stuff. I could see my daughter's bored expressions through the rearview mirror as we headed to our destination, looks that said, "Oh, hurry up and get this over with. Why'd you have to take us anyway? You could have done this without us." My daughters were 7 and 10 at the time. As we pulled up to the ill-repaired building on a city block where every other home was equally as worn and dilapidated, I got out of the car and slowly walked up the broken steps to the front entrance. I knocked on the door and it was partially and apprehensively opened by a sweet and well-mannered 12-year-old boy who managed a gentle hi. When I asked if his mom was home, he said she was in the restroom. Obviously a well-practiced response from a child who'd likely been left alone frequently while his mother was probably at work earning whatever she could to feed her family. Based on the ages and genders on the angel trees, we knew that there was no adult male in this household. After introducing myself, I let him know that my family and I were there to bring them a few things for Christmas and asked if it would be okay for us to bring them up to the front door and place them on the porch. I guess so. With that, he opened the door widely, exposing a house with only a few pieces of furniture, a couch, an end table, and a lampstand. There were no rugs, only sheets for curtains, only handmade children's artwork on the walls, a small television propped on the seat of a wooden chair, and most notably, a very small Charlie Brown Christmas tree in the corner of the room. It had no tree skirt, it had no presents underneath, not even one. On it was a strand or two of lights and a smattering of handmade paper ornaments. My heart was immediately saddened to know that people had to live with so little, while my children had never gone a day without a meal or material pleasures. I quickly glanced down the hallway and noticed that the scarcity of stuff extended far beyond what I saw in front of me. At my signal, My husband then exited the car with the 2 bags of groceries in each arm and handed them to the young boy, his face revealing a look of bewilderment at the unexpected gift. "These are for your Christmas dinner," he quietly told the boy, and turned to retrieve the gifts from the trunk. The young boy and I followed him. My daughters now exited the car, seemingly gaining a greater awareness of our mission, and turned to meet us at the now open trunk. My husband placed a gift in Gabrielle's hands, my 7-year-old, a couple more gifts into the arms of my 10-year-old Jessica, and 2 more into the arms of this young boy. With gifts in mine and my husband's arms as well, we followed him up to his front door, where he took the time to place each gift gently under the tree, his look of astonishment growing ever more evident. As we handed them to him, we read the tags. "This one is for a 3-year-old girl." "Well, that's my baby sister, Bella." "And this one says 7-year-old boy." "That's Sam's. That must be Sam's. Wow, that looks pretty big." We continued this gift handling and identification process until we got to the very last presents. And I promise you, not for the sake of exaggerating a story for this book, but rather as if divinely planned, the very last 2 gifts tied together with ribbon said, 12-year-old boy. As this final gift was handed to the sweet and gentle boy, he looked up and said, "For me? There's one for me too?" It seemed as if in his tender heart that though he saw gifts for each of his family members, including his mother, something deep down prevented him from assuming there'd be one for him as well. Possibly a lifetime of barren Christmases where few, if any, gifts were ever found under the Christmas tree on Christmas morning. Maybe he'd conditioned himself to expect nothing. I'll never forget how he clutched his shirt box-sized gift to his chest and just stood there for what seemed like 5 minutes, but was probably more like 5 seconds. Immediately thereafter, the largest smile ever seen on a 12-year-old stretched across his beautiful face. The kind of happy smile that stays on your face the entire day of your wedding or after you've just delivered your newborn baby. We wished him a Merry Christmas, and from our respective seats in our car, we watched him until he entered his house, reminding him not to forget to lock the door behind him. As my husband pulled away, our car remained blessedly silent, for none of us wanted to speak and lose the spirit of what we had just experienced. Each of us obviously touched by emotionally powerful exchange. We had just been part of it. Finally, after about 5 minutes, I heard the voice of my 7-year-old. "Can we do that again next year?" I knew exactly what she meant. And yes, we absolutely would do that again next year. What my daughter articulated and what we all felt that day was the intrinsic byproduct of eudaimonic happiness, the highest human good, whereupon we put someone else's needs before our own and our souls began to flourish. We were happy, truly happy. Here it is more than 2 decades later, and that short 15-minute interchange is still seared in my mind's eye as if it had just occurred last Christmas. Unlike the long since forgotten material gifts I'd received that year that appealed to my hedonistic nature, the happiness produced by that eudaimonic experience increases my happiness each subsequent time I think about it. Good stuff, hey? Have you ever seen the television series called Secret Millionaire? In each episode, a millionaire goes undercover into disadvantaged communities to work alongside poor but extremely compassionate and appreciative individuals or charities whose only goal is to do all they can for a forgotten or neglected part of their community. Little do they know the new volunteers working alongside them and getting to know them are millionaires who will reveal their true identities at the end of their week. When this reveal takes place, the millionaires also present to these individuals and charities large bags of cash to cover educational costs, medical expenses, pay off mortgages and cars, or to be used as seed money to build the infrastructure the financially strapped individuals envisioned, but could never before afford. Likewise, in Undercover Boss, a corporate CEO disguises him or herself and works alongside the company's frontline staff to observe practices that work exceptionally well or are bordering on failure with the intent of using the newfound knowledge to improve the overall company from the top levels down. However, just as in The Secret Millionaire, the residual relationships that are forged in this process inspire the executives to go beyond that, which can certainly help the company improve its bottom line, the receiving of new knowledge and better practices, to the giving of their own funds to those individuals alongside whom they worked. The executives will help their employees by giving them deserved promotions, increased pay, better equipment to work with, and numerous improvements to their work lives. However, so touched are most of these executives by one or more of the individual staff members that they will give to them gifts that will benefit them and their families personally, as did the Secret Millionaires. The unexpected beauty of these shows is seen not through the tear-stained faces of the individuals who have just received these life-altering gifts, but rather in the faces and the hearts of those who had given them. One secret millionaire once said that he was so overwhelmed by the emotional impact this event had on his life that he was now going to make a regular habit of giving back. And I am certain he was not alone. What each of these millionaires experienced was eudaimonic happiness, and it was not only intoxicating, but addictive. The intrinsic value of this event had lasting effects on them and their lives, so much so that they wanted to give more of themselves. Herein lays the essence of eudaimonia. Unlike the very selfish nature of hedonic happiness, the more I have, the more I need, the selfless nature of eudaimonic happiness is other-centric. The more I give, the more I want to continue giving, and my spirit flourishes. These millionaires and undercover bosses experienced the highest human good by giving to others above themselves, and they were happy. Happier than if they'd have kept their gifts to themselves. So what does all this mean for the super couple? I guess you'll have to listen to tomorrow's video because we're going to continue this chapter on eudaimonic happiness. Because once you start realizing your marriage is unhappy because you're focusing on yourself and you start focusing on your spouse's needs, it's going to transform your life. Let me know your thoughts. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. Thanks for watching this Bacon Bit. And as always, remember to live your life sunny side up.